All right, we're back here on Sportsline. Just before the break, we had a call from Nate, and part of his question, or one of his questions, was about the Titans and Mike Vrabel. And he basically said that he's trying not to be a pessimist, but he's not ready to crown Mike Vrabel as Coach of the Year because he hasn't seen anything yet, and he's a little bit worried about what may happen under the new coaching staff, and basically asked for my perspective on that. I, on this program and elsewhere, was a pretty staunch Mike Mularkey supporter in the sense that, think about where this team was 2 years ago when it was Ken Whisenhunt and Mike Mularkey took over in the interim role. I mean, this team was dreadful. It was the worst team in the league pretty much by far. And Mularkey changed the culture, with credit to John Robinson for helping him change the culture and drafting correctly and making some big moves, bringing in DeMarco Murray and Logan Ryan and some people like that. Credit to John Robinson. But Mike Mularkey's the guy who does it every single day. And for back-to-back seasons, he took that mess and turned them into 9-7, 9-7, and in the second year, a team that made the playoffs for the first time in 9 years, and then won a game in Kansas City before losing to the Patriots. I think he deserves a ton of credit for that. Now, whether he was ultimately the right guy long term, I think the Titans reached a point where they thought they needed to freshen some things up, especially on the offensive side of the ball. And so they moved away from Mularkey. But to me, that's a risky move. Let's start right there, because this is a team that has won 19 games in the last 2 years, including a playoff game. There are very few teams out there and quarterbacks out there that have won playoff games over the past few years. The Titans are one of them, with Marcus Mariota at the helm. Now you're going to change up his offense again going into next season. You're going to change up your entire coaching staff again going into next season. And oh, by the way, your division got tougher because Deshaun Watson's coming back. And I think the Texans probably have the best roster in the division. The Jaguars got to the AFC Championship last year. What do you think they're going to do this year? They're still looking for a quarterback, perhaps in Blake Bortles. But the rest of that roster looks like a team that can compete and win in the playoffs. So where do the Titans actually fit in here? I didn't think they had a playoff roster last year. They were borderline, but they got in and won a game. Yet they fired the coaching staff when the season was over. Now, maybe that's to help get them to the next level, and that's entirely possible. But that's just your starting out point here is expectations are 9 or 10 wins. Win the division, get to the playoffs, go further in the playoffs. That is the very small window that Mike Vrabel has to hit now as the team's new head coach in order to be a success. You know, people wanted the new coach. They wanted a new kind of a fresh style in here. I think you're going to get that for sure with Mike Vrabel. But here's my caution to you. In order for the Mike Vrabel tenure to be a success, he's going to have to get this team to the playoffs. He's going to have to win a division. He's going to have to win multiple games in the playoffs. Otherwise, you either stayed the same or you took a step back from what you had under Mike Mularkey. So we'll see if he can do that. We'll see if this offense brings enough to the table with this team, if the defense takes a step, and if the team can match the win totals or get back to the playoffs or win a division, because that's what Mike Vrabel is charged with doing here. And then the second part of this, and this has been talked about a lot in media circles around, is Mike Vrabel has come in and he has ruffled some feathers probably within the media community with the way he's handled things. And I will say this. A lot of people have made a big deal about who he's let talk and access, and we have certainly had less this year under Mike Vrabel than ever before with the Tennessee Titans during the offseason program. He's going to change it up again during OTAs where there will be no locker room access. You can only talk to players out on the field, limited access, things like that, fewer days that we can go and be a part of it. That's a bit of a bummer from the media standpoint because we have less stuff, and frankly it should be a bummer for fans too because we have less stuff to give you from players straight from their mouths or straight from coaches' mouths. But here's the thing. There's enough that we know about these guys. There's enough we can talk about these guys to come up with something. And there's ways for you to consume other things than actually hearing sound bites or reading quotes. So I don't have a huge problem with that, especially in the offseason here. The parts that got me with Vrabel is his opening press conference. Somebody asked him about a sign painted in the meeting room where we were having this press conference, open to the media, invited in, clear as day that the room had been changed and that there's a new sign. Somebody asked him about it, and Vrabel went off on just a wild tangent about the media being too nosy and don't go in and snooping around in the locker room because that's a player's safe haven and you guys probably shouldn't even be in there, but we have to let you in there, but you guys better not be going in there and snooping around. That has never happened here with the Tennessee Titans or with this media corps. Yet he decided to take a harmless question about a slogan that he very clearly had them paint on the wall as the new head coach to run off on this tangent against the media. I just thought that was really poorly timed. And it made me wonder that if you go off on that, what else are you going to lose track of things on and go off down the road? And he's had a few other moments like that. He changed the outside press conference setting because he didn't like guys standing up by him at the podium. So he made them bring out chairs and make it a more formal setting. That's fine. Whatever. It's just another thing that I'm wondering about. If he's worried about that, what is he maybe not worried about that he should be? And then the last thing was when someone then asked him about the limited access or not being allowed to talk to certain guys here in the offseason, his response was essentially, because I'm the head coach and I told you so. And I know the media is probably not going to like it, but that's the way it's going to be. And he walked away, and that was the end of the press conference. Why you handled yourself like that right now when there is literally no pressure on you, I think it's a bit concerning. Now, here's what I've said every time somebody has asked me about this. If he goes on to win next year at any level, people will not give a darn how he treated us or what he did in the offseason or the level of media access. It just does not matter. But here's the thing. I've heard some people defend and sort of say he's from that Bill Belichick school. I think this is opposite Bill Belichick, frankly. Bill Belichick cares about what matters. He cares about the things that matter to the football team. And offseason media availability does not. You will not win a game, you will not lose a game based off of how you treat the media in the offseason. You just won't. So to me, that is the exact example of the type of nonsense that Bill Belichick stays far, far away from. And here Mike Vrabel, who's never coached an NFL game as a head coach, is treading into that water here right away. And look, maybe he's so darn good that he can micromanage all of that stuff and still be great on game day and win a bunch. And if he is, more power to him, and no one will care. But when the caller, Nate, brought up the comparison to Ken Whisenhunt about people being excited and, well, what have you actually done? Well, let's be honest. Whisenhunt had been to a Super Bowl before. Mike Vrabel's never coached a game. But if you want to draw a comparison between any coach that has walked through the doors at St. Thomas Sports Park to be the head coach of the Titans to how Mike Vrabel has acted in his first couple of months on the job, it's the Ken Whisenhunt, not Mike Mularkey, not Mike Munchak, not Jeff Fisher, and frankly, not many other coaches we've dealt with. It is I'm going to have my hands in everything. I'm going to set up the rules for everything and anything around here, and it is my show and it is my way or the highway. And I just don't think when you look at the Belichicks and the Sabans of the world, yes, they care about and they're meticulous about certain things. But when it comes to the stuff that doesn't matter, I think they back away from that stuff. And this, to me, is an example of nonsense that I don't think a Belichick or a Saban worries about. And Mike Vrabel has been very much worried about it so far. Doesn't mean he won't get over that. Doesn't mean he can't win beyond it. But when you ask for the basic observations early on in his career, that's what you got. And I think it is a little bit alarming because a lot of times the people who focus on that stuff are losing sight of the stuff that really does matter, that really does make a difference between winning and losing on the field. So we'll see what happens with Mike Vrabel. I know some fans who are so fired up have not wanted to hear that and just think it's sour grapes from the media. I don't care. If you say we can come to practice less, it means we work less, frankly. And we still have plenty enough stuff to talk about for what we do on TV. But when you ask for the observation, I think it's important for us to relay that to you. And again, I can't tell you whether he's going to win or lose based off of all of this. But I do think there is a word of warning to be passed along about how he's handled himself in the early going, based off of other coaches we've dealt with in various sports and how they've handled things like that, and then what their results were ultimately. And I can tell you this, if he wins, it won't matter, but if he loses, there will be very few people standing up for him because he's been so secretive about a lot of stuff that you can't even really, you know, one of the things, for instance, with the media access, when he got asked the question, had he said something simple like, because my job is to do what's best for the football team, and a lot of these guys may not even make our football team, and they're rookies out here right now, and they're trying to learn what's going on in the National Football League and be a part of this. And when they've earned that right and really are a part of this, we're going to let them talk. But right now they haven't gotten to that point yet, and so I think it's best that we let the draft picks only, who are the guys who are going to make this team, I think it's best we let them talk right now. We'll see when we want to integrate those other guys later. I'm not sure I totally agree with that, but if that was his line of thinking and that's how he explained it, I would have gladly explained that to anybody who wanted to listen and said this is his logic and this is what he's thinking there. But when you stand up there and essentially evoke the parent line of because I said so, that doesn't give me a great reason. And it doesn't allow me to then articulate it back to you guys of what he's thinking. So all I know is a couple times he's taken questions and basically gone off the deep end for no reason. Nobody's calling him out. Nobody's really pressuring him to do anything. He's not on the hot seat at this point. He hasn't coached a game. But yet he's chosen to be combative in these situations. What's it going to be like if you lose a couple in a row? That's the concern, I think, if you're a Titans fan. Let's go back to the phones now and say hello to Henry. Henry, good evening. You are next up here on Sportsline.
Hey, Steve. How you doing, man?
Doing well. Thanks for the call.
Hey, you hit on a lot of the points, man, that you talked about last year about how well they've done and then them changing coaches. And I'm worried about the fact that, you know, you got a new guy coming in here, never coached a game, and you expect for all of a sudden them to be better. I don't see it. I hope I'm wrong. I hope I'm wrong. But the schedule points out the schedule's tough. And I don't see how he's going to win more than 7, 8, 9 games at the most. Now, Steve, I'm a Titans supporter, but I think that they made a mistake when they fired the coach. And that's just my opinion. A lot of people have other opinions, but that's my opinion.
Sure, and I don't think it's a bad one. I mean, look, there are very few teams that fire coaches that get to the playoffs for that very reason, is it's a very small target you're asking the next guy to hit when you do it. Let me ask you this, Henry. If Mike Vrabel comes in next year and doesn't hit that mark, say he goes 7-9, so not a terrible season, but obviously not 9 wins, not back in the playoffs next year, I think that'll be a disappointment to Titans fans. But how long will you give him to get them to that point before you start thinking, man, we got to move on from this guy?
Well, I think right now you got to give him a couple years, maybe two or 3 years. I mean, you have to because you just hired the guy.
Yeah. I mean, I agree with you, Henry, and sorry, we're running up a break here, so I got to run. But the problem with that is you only gave a guy who won 18 games in the regular season in 2 years and got you to the playoffs for the first time in 9 years, 2 years. So you've set kind of a short window for this thing here. And if he steps back, man, what are you thinking next year at this time? But again, lots to see this fall. We will see how Mike Vrabel does. We got to take a break. We'll be back after this.